This is what's in my golf bag. I've got a PING G400 LST. It's got a Aldila XTORSION shaft in it. Quite a light shaft, 60 grams, extra stiff, tipped as well. 10 degrees of loft, and it is actually 10 degrees of loft. It's not been cranked or anything like that. Doesn't spin that much. Launch is high. I love this driver. It's given me some extra distance. G400 3-wood, 14.5 degrees loft. Once again an Aldila shaft, but this is a Phonom shaft. A little bit heavier than my driver shaft. This is 70 grams, but you'd expect that with a 3-wood. Then I go to a 3 hybrid, 19 degrees. Sort of fills the gap between 4-iron and 3-wood. I don't carry a 3-iron because greens are too firm nowadays, and this goes in a bit higher and stops a bit quicker. So that's got a Aldila tour shaft in it, extra stiff again. Well, certain weeks I do carry a 3-iron, I might even carry a 2-iron, but regular, usually the normal weeks I don't carry a 3-iron and I carry 4 wedges, so I need something to fit into that gap between a 4-iron and a 3-wood, and this goes about 235, 240 yards, so it fits that gap nicely because my 4-iron goes about 220. And 4-iron through to U-wedge are all I200s. I carry 2 U-wedges. One's in between a wedge, and the other U-wedge counts as my sand iron because they don't make a sand iron in this set. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 wedge. U-wedge that goes 121 yards, sand wedge that goes 106, and then I carry the new Glide lob wedge, 60 degrees. I've used this lob wedge for a long time with this particular sole. It gives me a lot of variation around the greens, and it's great out of bunkers as well. And they're all extra stiff shafts, the PING shaft. I've used that for years, so I'm used to the way it reacts to my swing. It's just a standard PING shaft, yeah, just tipped a little bit, and obviously it's stiff. And then alignment sticks, which I use on the range for my lining up, and I use on the putting green as well for running the putter up and down. Just the loft. The sand iron's a little bit shorter. This U-wedge is marginally shorter, as you can see there. If we get the ferrules lined up, it's, what's that, half an inch shorter. And it says on the back of them the lofts that it's got on there, 53, and the U-wedges are 50. And my wedge is a 45.5. I sometimes carry a wedge that goes a little bit shorter if I'm carrying 3 wedges and a 3-iron. I carry a wedge that's 47 degrees, and then one that's a little bit stronger. It runs at about 51.5, so that fills in the gap between my pitching wedge and my lob wedge. Well, I've just used this style of wedge for so many years. I've been using them, right back to the I2s and then Zing 2s. So I've always used this style of wedge and just carried one of those for shots around the greens. Very rarely do I hit my lob wedge full out. Occasionally I do, and it goes about 91, 92 yards. Yeah, it depends what it is. Obviously, with having been with PING for so many years, they really know my swing and all the stats and the fittings for me. So generally, they bring along a club and it fits me immediately. I don't have to do too much tinkering around. If I need a replacement driver fitting, they can make a couple out, send them out to me, and generally one of them's spot on. So. Yeah, I do change, but I try not to change too often. I like the clubs to stay the same, and then I get rid of one variable. I know if I'm hitting them bad, it's me and it's not the club. Generally, if I find a 3-wood that I like, I stick with it. I find it very hard to find a good 3-wood. Just the way it's always been. And as for the rest, I change I change drivers quite regularly whenever they bring a new one out. I've had that one in since. This style in since the US Open, and this particular driver in for the last 2 or 3 tournaments. I changed around with putters quite a lot, so the putter is a Tyne H Sigma, just a regular pin grip on it. I've had the line made a little bit bigger, and I've moved it a little bit towards the heel, because I generally set the ball up out the toe. So I figured if I have the line slightly more towards the heel, then if I do line up out the toe, that's probably going to be out the middle.
There's logic there. Okay.
A kind of logic there, yeah. That's about 35, I think, 35 inches, so pretty standard. Yeah, I've used the thicker grips. I've tinkered around with different grips as well, but I like this at the moment. It feels good in my hands. Nice and feels heavy, but I can grip it light and it feels heavy.